Okay, good morning everyone from a lovely overcast Dublin in Ireland, and good evening to all those who are joining us from the other side of the world. Welcome to our Morgan McKinley webinar on 7 simple coaching strategies to banish overwhelmedness and be happy now. I'm Tara Clancy, Senior Marketing Executive here with Morgan McKinley in Ireland. Before we get started, I'd just like to say a big, massive thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us today. We've had a fantastic response to this webinar with almost 2,000 registered worldwide. Okay. So just to start off with a little bit of housekeeping for everyone, just to make sure that you can hear us. You can listen in using either of these two options, your phone or your computer or tablet, and speakers or headphones. To use your telephone, if you prefer to use a telephone, you must select Use Telephone and use the relevant number for your region as found in the email invite. If you have any questions at all with the sound, please contact events@morganmckinley.com and someone will come back to you. And how to ask a question. Questions will be taken via the question chat feature on your webinar control panel. You can also contact events@morganmckinley.com and someone will also come back to you also. You can also join in on social media on Twitter using our hashtag success series or tweet us directly at Morgan McKinley. Okay, so today I'm joined by the lovely Tulane Danner. Tulane is the international best-selling author of 3 books, including Coach Yourself to Success, a Master Certified Coach, and the founder of LifeCoach.com. Her clients include executives, professionals, public officials, entrepreneurs, and international leaders. One of the most widely recognized life coaches in the world, Tulane has been featured in numerous magazines from Newsweek to Fortune and has appeared on national and international television and radio programs, including the BBC and CBS Saturday Morning. Prior to becoming a coach, Tulane held a corporate position as a second vice president at Chase Bank in New York City. She graduated from the School of Foreign Service and has a master's in English from Georgetown University. Tulane currently lives in Devon and England with her husband and 2 children. So without further ado, I shall pass you over to Tulane and hope you enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much. Well, we're going to have quite a big schedule today. We're going to give you an overview of what I'm just going to share some basic, very simple life coaching strategies and tips that you can use. And my hope is today that you'll walk away with at least 1 or 2 things that you can immediately implement to make your life easier right now. And it's so important that we really are enjoying our lives now. Sometimes we forget, we get so busy. I have 2 little girls, and we're off to America for the summer. I'm an American, as you can probably tell by my accent. And so I was telling them, because my sister has a little ferret as a pet, and we said, the ferret's on its last legs and may not live very long. And my daughter said, well, just how many legs does he have left? And so we're thinking, so as you say things, you think, okay, so taking things literally. So we had a good laugh about that one. But the kids have a different perspective on things, and they don't really have the same sense of time that we get as adults, and things can get all mushed together. We can get absolutely crazy. And I don't think there's any accident with the fact that the current trends of the day right now are mindfulness, which is actually about just being present in the moment. And that's what the whole mindfulness thing. I've never seen so many mindfulness coloring books. It's like, what is going on here? We're all reverting back to childhood because we're so desperate to get some peace in our life, some mental stability. And also the other trend that I've seen happening is this trend in decorating of minimalism. So all of a sudden, we're all supposed to be minimalists and not have any clutter, and we're all, practicing mindfulness. Well, this all happened as a result of the cell phone. It's completely. People check their phones 150 times a day on average. Some more, some less, but that's pretty much the average. So all you really need, you could actually probably disconnect from the webinar right now if you just disconnected from your phone. But I know that's not going to happen. I just know that's not going to happen. So I can't pry you from your phone. So I'm going to give you some other tips, and hopefully that'll help you. But if you just did that, you probably wouldn't need to do the rest of this stuff. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to do. The brain download. We're going to dump all the stuff that's in your brain, cluttering up your mind, so that hopefully you can get a little bit of mindfulness in there. So I'll show you how to do that. We're going to clear your physical clutter and create some space, both mental and physical, for you, so you have some thinking space, some breathing space. I'll show you how to leverage the 80-20 rule for time management. We're going to automate the survival stuff in your life so that you have more space and time, some very time-consuming activities that we spend our lives doing. We'll find out, I'll show you how you can find the source of your unhappiness, or at least one source. You may have other sources that I don't know of, but one source of your unhappiness. We'll find out what actually does make you happy. You'll start to go with the flow, and then I'll give you some tips on getting started right now with creating happiness today. All right, so that's the fairly a lot to cover, but we are going to have some time for questions. Feel free to send in your questions via the chat feature. We will answer every single question that we get, even if it takes me a week. So feel free to ask whatever you want. We may not be able to get them all done today, but we will send you an email follow-up with those questions. So feel free to do that, and we will eventually get back to you, hopefully sooner rather than later. All right, here we go. All right, now, with all things, if they're too complicated, you're not going to be able to do them. The secret to being happy now is to get rid of the things that make you unhappy and add in the things that make you happy. And if you do that, you're going to be one happy camper. So again, not complicated, simple stuff. Anybody can do this. So let's start with the brain download. There's 2 lists that I'd like you to make. Now, if you're absolutely overwhelmed right now, you need to get a grip on exactly how much it is you have to do, or at least that you think you have to do. So we'll start with just making a list. So the first list is just a list of all the things that you think you need to do. Whatever comes to mind, just write it down. So this is a to-do list. Get a piece of paper and a pencil out and start writing every single thing. And it can be stuff, I have to get milk for Rata Milk, to I have to prepare a report for 100 executives. It doesn't matter. The get milk takes just as much space in your brain as preparing a speech for 100 people. So equally, they take up space in your brain. So if you don't write the get milk on the list, it's going to be there bothering you. So make your list of everything. And if you feel like, I really need to read War and Peace one day, well, put that on your list too. Whatever occurs to you is, I've got to do this. I need to learn French, whatever. Okay, put it on your list. So once you've written down, you'll see, this is the amazing thing. Now, people usually have 2 reactions to the list. And one of those is that they either feel completely overwhelmed by their list, which often happens. But here's the thing, don't worry about that. Just make the list. And the good news, and no matter how long your list is, you will discover one thing about it. It is a finite list. It isn't infinite. It is finite. There is a number of things. It might be 1,000 and 100 things, but it is a finite number. By getting it out of your head, you're going to clear that mental space so that you can then start to think, okay. And once it's on a piece of paper, you can start to think, all right, what do I do with this to-do list? Who can I delegate these things to? Do I really need to read War and Peace right now? Maybe not. So some of the things you might put as a someday, one day, and move them to the back. Some things you might move to the forefront. It will help you see what there is to do. Okay, so when you're really overwhelmed, the brain download's a great technique. Now, there's another technique that's good. And this is a separate list. So it is not a to-do list. So it is a list of the 60 to 100 things that you are currently tolerating or putting up with in your life. So these are things like you take a shower, you get out of the shower in the morning, and you go put on your bathrobe, and you notice there's a little tear in the collar. You think, I've got to sew that up. So that could technically be a to-do, but put it on your annoyances list, little things that bug you and annoy you. Some of these may overlap, don't panic about it, but this list of annoyances is not necessarily a to-do list. We just want to see, what are you tolerating, what are you putting up with? Now, it could be something about yourself. Maybe you have a bad habit, you bite your fingernails, or that you have a few extra pounds. Those could be things that annoy you. Maybe you're annoyed by your commute, that you don't like commuting, or you don't like the traffic or the tube or whatever you're using to convey yourself to work. Maybe you're annoyed about a colleague at work who has an annoying habit of interrupting you, or a boss who micromanages you. Anything that annoys you. So they're not necessarily to-dos. They're annoyances, things that you're tolerating and putting up with. And it's really important to make a full list of this. It could be, the average is 60 to 100. And we start thinking about things that annoy you about your home. You go to open the refrigerator and the light bulb's burnt out in the fridge, so you're groping around in the dark. It could be things about your car, the rear view mirror is cracked. You think, I got to get that fixed. So you'll see some of the things, and some things could be really big. Like you might be annoyed about car alarms or terrorism or any sort of thing that could annoy you. Put it on the list, even if you don't have the immediate solution. So those are two separate lists. And the list of petty annoyances, and some could be more than petty, you don't necessarily have to do anything about just yet. So we'll take a look at that and make the list. Now, I'll tell you a funny story. My sister, when I first started coaching some 20 years ago, she said, oh, well, can you coach me? And we were living together at the time. And I said, okay, so make your list of petty annoyances. That's the first thing I give as an assignment to all new coaching clients. And so she did. And then my coach said, well, you aren't supposed to coach your family members. It's not a good idea, especially if you're living with them. I said, oh, okay, I can see your point. So I told her, I can't coach you. I'm sorry, my coach said it's not a good idea. So she stormed off in a huff and tore up her list of petty annoyances, and that was that. Well, funny thing, about a month later, her cubicle mate that she worked in insurance in Boston, and her cubicle mate got transferred to a different department. And she'd never said anything, but interestingly enough, he was on her list of petty annoyances. And without saying anything or doing anything other than writing that list, he mysteriously was transferred to a different area. So there's a certain magic to having this list of things, and you can either work on them, deliberately, sew on some missing buttons, sew up that bathroom, get that rear view mirror fixed, and go ahead and fix those things. And I've never had a single client in 20 years of coaching that has ever regretted spending money to fix a petty annoyance. In fact, what they all say is, gosh, I wish I had done this sooner. I don't know why I was tolerating this. I should have had this fixed ages ago. So it will free up, this is the amazing thing, it will free up a tremendous amount of mental RAM, if you want to have brain space. These little petty annoyances just take up more of our brain space than we realize. We think, oh, it's just a little thing. It's just a tear in the bathrobe. It's just a crack in the mirror. It's not a big deal. But added up, these 60 to 100 petty annoyances are a massive energy drain, and they actually do wear on you more than you think. So that is the first tip that I always give people for coaching, and one of the best ones. It has a sneaky side effect, which I will reveal to you, and that is that once you start fixing these little things, you create momentum in life, in your own life, for fixing the bigger things. So you might say, when people hire me for coaching, they don't usually say, oh, I'm hiring Telaine to sew on a few missing buttons or fix a tear in a bathrobe or a rear view mirror. They don't hire me for that. They have much, much bigger goals. But what they don't realize is that these little things are actually preventing or slowing them down from reaching their bigger goals and objectives in life. And I liken it very much to if you have an ocean liner going off to Bali or someplace nice. Every so often they have to scrape the barnacles off the side of the ship, these tiny little barnacles, and they have to scrape them off. And the reason they do that, even though it's very expensive to scrape the barnacles off and time consuming, is because the barnacles create a lot of drag and resistance on the ship, enough that it takes more energy, more fuel for the ship to get where it's going. And if you look at your petty annoyances, they work the same way in your own life. If you have a lot of these little annoyances, they're like the barnacles of your life. And you'll be using more energy to get to your bigger goals. So scrape those things off, get rid of them, and you will sail through life with ease. Okay, so it's a very simple tip. If you do nothing else from this webinar, but just that one thing, and make your list of 60 to 100 annoyances, you'll have gotten your money's worth. Not that you paid. All right, let's move on to clearing the clutter. So as I said, we're in an era of minimalism these days, so let's get rid of the clutter. Now, I was just recently chatting with one of my girlfriends who owns a business in England, and I mentioned off the cuff that I had 1,800 emails in my inbox. And she looked at me in horror and said, Telaine, how could you possibly function with 1,800 emails in your inbox? And I said, you know what, I think I am functioning fine. I'm on top of it. And she said, no, you're not. She said, you can't possibly manage 1,800. I said, okay. But I said, I've got Gmail, and I don't know how to get rid of those emails. They just never delete. They always seem to persist in there. And she said, well, Google how to delete an archive here. So, of course, I Googled it and found it in 2 minutes right up top a 5-minute solution on how to archive emails. So if you do have Gmail or if you have Outlook or anything else, you can actually archive your emails and get rid of them. And in literally 5 minutes, I went from 1,800 emails because I decided, well, I'll set up a rule that I'll just archive anything from last year. And given that we're halfway through the new year, I figured that's safe enough. And so we did that, and instantly I went down from 1,800 emails to 200 emails in my inbox. So that was just this New Year's email. I thought, okay, well, that's not so bad. I'm only 200 emails behind. Then, now that was such a great fell swoop, I proceeded to get down to 20 emails in my inbox. And I have decided that actually that's a very good number to have. You can manage 20 emails in your inbox, and that's really about it, because it's about what you can see on one screen. Anything more than that, and you've got email clutter. The feeling of relief when you can get rid of those emails. So if you are like me and have the stash of emails that you're saving, just archive them. They don't actually delete anymore. They just disappear, wonderfully disappear. So you can get rid of those. Another thing, now this is the CC file. I will share this tip with you. I don't have that much trouble with it because I have my own business. But if you work in a corporation, you'll no doubt be getting a lot of CC'd emails. And coaching executives, one of the things I've discovered is that you can just set up an automatic filter that any CC'd emails go into a CC file. So you could just set up all those CCs to go into a CC separate folder. They don't get into your inbox. Now, a lot of people panic at this point and say, well, wait a minute. Well, if they didn't want you to get the email in the first place and they've only CC'd you, it's really more about covering their backside. It's not necessarily that you need to know it. So if you're only in a CC, you probably don't need to know what's in that email. It's not going to be mission critical for you. So it can live happily in the CC file. And I had some clients who said, if people may need to train it, and they said, well, how come you haven't responded to my email? And the person said, well, because you CC'd me. If you want me to respond, you should put it in the proper address box, not the CC. And so they learned that if it was actually important, they get a direct email, not a CC'd email. So try that as a technique, and you'll find that most of the CC'd stuff will fall into the 80-20 rule, and we'll talk more about that later, but you will actually never need to look at it. So that will just clear up an amazing amount of stuff and actually help you be more effective by focusing on what's truly important and not what's not. Okay, so that's a real quick tip on handling email. Now, what about physical clutter and stuff that we have in our lives? How do you get rid of all of that? There is a gal who's quite popular right now. Her name is Marie Kondo. She's Japanese, and she's written a book called The Magic Art of Tidying, or something like that. Charming, delightful Japanese lady, and she's just on a mission. She's a fanatic about tidying up and creating clear spaces. And she has spent her whole life figuring out methods of tidying and has tried every single decluttering technique in the world. So she is our test guinea pig out there in Japan. And in Japan, they have very little space. So they have a premium on space. And so we can take it from her that she's figured it out. And sure enough, she has. It is the easiest thing in the world. If you go to evaluate your clutter, all you have to do is hold an object in your hands, and you've got to get your hands on it. It's no good just looking at it. I suppose you could do it looking at it, but you got to touch it. Because what she wants to ask, you've got to ask yourself, does this thing give me joy? That's it. Either yes or no. Does this thing give me joy? So you start with your clothes. You hold a shirt or a pair of shoes or whatever it is, but she recommends you start with the top. So you hold a shirt in your hands, and you ask yourself, does this shirt give me joy? Not whether I've used it in the last 6 months. Does it give me joy? Yes or no? And it's really interesting when you try that. You find that things will resonate with you right away, or they won't. It's like, well, actually, this is just an okay shirt, and it's not one that gives me joy. You can clear things out so quickly with that very, very simple method. So I really like it because it's fast. It's really fast. You can get rid of easily 50 to 80% of your things quite quickly. Now, sometimes people say, what if everything gives me joy? Tara is looking at me right now and thinking, I've got a lot of clothes and every single one of them in my closet gives me joy. Well, if that's your problem, you need to have a maximum limit on things. And say, for example, you have 25 shirts and you keep 25 shirts. or blouses or whatever it is. You have 50 pairs of shoes, and that's your maximum limit of shoes, probably based on how many cubby holes you have for shoes. I've got a client in America, and she's very wealthy, and she has a whole room that is her walk-in wardrobe, and she has more dresses than she can wear in an entire year. And so we've set her maximum limit of dresses at 352. And after that, so every year, but she's got a lot of money. She just shops for fun. It's not that she's actually going to wear the clothes. So her shopping has a totally different purpose. It's not really about wearing the clothes. It's about buying the clothes and then donate them later to charity. And she's just satisfying an urge. And I said, you know what? Other people do drugs. You're probably better off shopping. All right, so that's your joy filter for clearing clutter. It's absolutely wonderful. If everything gives you joy, then you need to put a numeric limit just based on your space. All right, so now papers. Now, I love Marie Kondo's approach to papers. And she said, paper cannot give you joy. She takes a very hardline stance on papers. She said, since no paper can give you joy, it's simple. Keep only those that you are required by law to keep or by your boss to keep. If you're not required by law to keep them, get rid of them. So really simple. All you have to say, do I have to keep this? Yes. File it somewhere with a label on it so you can find it. If you don't have to keep it, out it goes. How simple is that? Pretty easy, right? So that will help you immediately clear out paper. And now with the, everything's on it. If you need something, it just Google it. I mean, now it's easier than ever. We used to keep things because we had to. Now there's no point because whatever you've kept, it's going to be out of date. So there's no point. I do have one exception to that. I do keep my children's artwork. Some of it, not all of it. But I do have that's paper that does actually give me joy. So you might have a few things that give you joy. I don't entirely agree with her on that one. So, all right, now what about obligations? So this is clearing space on your calendar, and you want to create some space, some white space on your calendar for new opportunities to come in. You don't want to be too jammed up. So how do we do that? Well, the trick is, of course, just say no. And I actually take a yellow highlighter through my calendar and book out the time so that I don't book anything else into it. Book some white space into your calendar ahead of time, and then just say no. So you don't have to let everything come in. So say no to anything, again, that doesn't give you joy. So I was just reading a funny book by the guy who started CD Baby, and his basic criteria, if somebody would get an email or somebody asked him to do something, and if he wasn't saying, hell yeah, to it, that was what his criteria was, then he wouldn't do it. I thought, okay, well, I like that. We can live with that. That was Derek Simon. All right, so there you go. That will create some white space for you. Now, this ties right into the 80-20 rule. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, these 3 questions will completely save you, absolutely help you focus. Because when you're overwhelmed, you've lost your focus. You're doing too much at once. So you need to think, okay, what do I need to do? Every day, get a piece of paper out and write down the answers to these 3 questions. Number 1, what is important about today? Number 2, what must get done today? And I mean must, like absolutely must, required, has to get done, not what I'd like to get done. And then what is important about the future? So, and this could be both your business and personal life. So what's important about today might be that it's your son's birthday and you need to get home early to get him a cake and have a little party. Or it might be that you have a very important meeting with a client or your boss. So those might be the things that are important about today. We ask what's important about the future, and that could be the long-term future as well as the near-term future. Because we don't want to only focus on today and then all of a sudden be caught short and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't prepare 2 weeks in advance for this presentation that I have coming up. And the reason this one works so well is, and there's a wonderful little story that's from the book Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it's a professor is teaching his class time management, and he says, all right, he gets out a big glass jar that's empty, and he puts in the rocks into it. And he says, okay, he asks the students, he says, is the jar full? And he's put some big rocks in. And they say, yeah, it's full. Can't get any more rocks in. So then he scoops underneath the table and he takes out a jar of pebbles and he pours the pebbles into the jar and they filter between the rocks. And he says, okay, now is it full? And they say, okay, now it's full. And then he gets in a bucket of sand and he pours the sand into the jar and the sand filters between the pebbles and the rocks. And he says, okay, is it full? And now they're not so sure. And then he gets a bucket of water out and he pours the water in, which filters between the sand and the pebbles and the rocks. And he said, okay, so what is the point of this demonstration? And one of the students pipes right up and says, it just goes to show that even when you think your schedule is already full, you can always jam a few more things in. And the professor said, no. The point of this exercise is if you don't get the big rocks in first, you'll never get them in. And that's the point of the story. So in terms of time management, our big rocks are the things that are most important to us, the things that really make a difference to our success, to our lives. What's really important is your son's 3rd birthday. He will remember that. Maybe not at 3, but maybe at 5 he will. But really important. So that might be the most important thing to orient your whole day around. Or it might be this critical meeting that you're having with a client. And so if we can focus on those key things, that is the 20% that makes the difference. And this is the 80-20 rule, that 80% of what we do doesn't really matter that much. 20% of our actions lead to 80% of our results. Only 20% of what we do is actually the important stuff. And so when you're feeling overwhelmed, my guess is that you're buried in sand and you're focusing on the sand and the pebbles and you're probably missing the big rocks. And that's checking your phone 150 times a day. That's sand. It's just adding a bit of grit and annoyance to your life. So, the 80-20 rule will help you focus on what you need to be doing that will actually make a difference in your career. And when I coach executives in this and they start to apply this tip to their working life, they find that it just gets rid of all that noise. There's just a lot of little stuff in the background, all that sand out there. It just gets rid of that noise and they can focus on what really needs to get done. And then even if they don't get everything done in a day, which nowadays people can't, nobody can get everything that they need to get done in a day anymore. There's just too much to do. And if you don't get done the things that you feel are important, at least you'll end the day thinking, I've accomplished something real, something important. I got the big rocks in. And that's what we're shooting for, the sense of accomplishment, focusing on what's actually going to make a difference to your career, to the success of the business or the company. And that's the key. Let the noise go by. If those things don't get done, you may discover they never needed to get done. All right. So let's talk a little bit about, we got rid of some of the junk. Remember I said that happiness is about getting rid of the stuff that annoys us, getting rid of the things that make you unhappy and adding in the things that make us happy. And actually, if you look at what coaching and what we do as coaches, we follow Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs pretty closely. So if you look down at this little pyramid here, at the bottom, we've got our basic survival needs. And I lump them all together. So the safety and security, that's having a house, food, shelter, warmth, rest. You need to feel safe and secure. You can have a lock on your door if you need, but you need to feel safe, whatever that is. So those all are, I consider to be your basic survival needs. That you're not afraid that at any moment, a lion's going to eat you up or something. You'll die of freezing cold or drown in the rain in England. Then after your basic needs are met, then we start looking around for love and affection. Our psychological needs, those are our personal and emotional needs. So I think of these as our emotional needs, the things that we need to feel happy in our lives, to feel content. So while survival needs when those are satisfied, we feel safe. When our emotional needs, those psychological needs here, are satisfied, we feel contentment. And we feel discontentment or irritability if they're not. So those are our needs, like to be loved and appreciated, to be understood, to be heard, to be right, to be in control. So there's over 100 different needs. And I'll show you how you can figure out which ones are yours. But getting those met is part of becoming happier. At least you're getting rid of the sources of unhappiness. Because if our personal emotional needs are not met, if we're still struggling at survival, it's hard to be happy. When it's easy to be happy is when we're at the top of the pyramid, at the self-actualization. That's when one is living up to their full creative potential, expressing themselves fully, that they are self-fulfillment. These are what we call your values, your core values. It's what's really most important to you. And that even if you had won the billion lottery, you would want to wake up and do something with your life. You could do anything you want. That would be the self-actualization. That is where true happiness and fulfillment comes from. So we want to get past the basic survival needs. We want to get our emotional needs fulfilled, and then we're going to move right up to the top there, to the source of happiness, and that is self-fulfillment and living your values, right? So that's the plan anyway. So let's talk about basic survival. How do you automate your basic survival? And this will free up an enormous amount of time and reduce your feelings of feeling overwhelmed. We want to automate, delegate, simplify, and systematize absolutely everything that you possibly can, more than you think you need. So hire that house cleaner. Do your grocery shopping online. Have a weekly menu plan so you don't have to think about what you're going to eat every week. Have your laundry and ironing outsourced. If you have a lawn, get a gardener or get the kid in the neighborhood to mow the lawn. Reduce your commute time. Either telecommute or see if you can work from home a couple of times a week, or maybe work longer days and then fewer days. So see what you can do to reduce your commuting time. Automate your finances. Nowadays you can pay your bills online. You can do online budgeting, investing. Everything can now be automated. And you can even automate your social life and your date night. Especially, I've got 2 kids, and if we didn't automate our date night, we'd have been too tired to go out. So we had a standing appointment at the same restaurant every week, so we didn't need to think about booking someplace. Where do we go? We didn't have to think. And we had a standing babysitter come to look after the kids. That automated our date night. And without that, I don't think I'd have seen my husband for years, at least not in a romantic capacity. So the great thing about automating survival is that survival stuff takes a lot of time. I have a house cleaner, and that's 7 hours a week that I would spend cleaning. That's a whole day. So I've got an extra day a week just because I have a cleaner. So, amazing amounts of time can be saved by automating some of this really easy stuff. All right, so now that's the lower end of the pyramid. The source of unhappiness. I said we'd find one source. There may be other things in your life, but you can find those on your list of petty annoyances. What other things are causing you unhappiness? But our emotional and personal needs, if you have any unmet needs, that will create a feeling of dissatisfaction, of unhappiness and discontentment in your life, this rankling feeling of discontentment. And for example, at work, if you have the need to be independent or free, you might really resent, resist, or chafe working for a micromanaging or controlling boss or manager. And that just is going to happen. I had a client who had the need for peace, and everything was fine until her company went to an open floor plan, an open office plan, and they took all the offices that were private and put them all on an open floor. She couldn't think straight. She couldn't write well. She was going to lose her job. And we took the emotional index quiz, which is free on lifecoach.com. It does take 20 minutes, so don't do it right now. But you can find the quiz will tell you what your top 4 personal and emotional needs are. So out of 100 different needs, we'll narrow down which ones you need to focus on. So she took that and found out need to peace came right up. And so the thing about our needs is they're not optional. We treat them like they're optional. And her friends would say, oh, well, just put some headphones on. Or other people who don't have that need don't really appreciate how important it is to you. And they also don't appreciate that if you don't have that need fulfilled, you are not going to be your best. That you will be irritable, that you will be crabby, that you'll be cranky. So if you are finding yourself irritable, and it's not because you've missed a meal, or on that 5-2 diet, so it's not because you've missed a meal and you're not crabby for that reason. So that's survival. You haven't eaten. That would be survival. But take a look and see what's going on. What's happening that's causing you to be so irritable or cranky? Because I'll guarantee you it's probably an unmet need lurking around. Is it because your boss is trying to control you and you're resisting that or resenting that? Is it that you can't think straight because it's too noisy in your office? What if maybe it's you have the need? A lot of people have the need to be included, and it's not logical. Our needs are not logical. One client was saying how she had the need to be included, and even though her friends knew she was going to be on holiday and away for a week, she still wanted them to invite her to the party. If she said it's not logical, but it makes me feel included. So her friends now know to invite her, even though they know she can't come, because she just likes to be included, and that makes her feel included. So again, not logical, but our needs are emotional, and they work on the emotional part of our brain. They have nothing to do with logic. So your mental, illogical side of your brain is going to say, oh, well, that's ridiculous. And it will be from a logical standpoint. That's ridiculous. Emotionally, you're going to feel great. So again, doesn't necessarily connect. You might think, oh, that sounds really silly. I can't be asking somebody to do that. But your real friends, the people who care about you, want to actually meet your needs, and they just don't know what your needs are. So we've got to find out what your needs are so that you can ask them very specifically to meet your needs. And that will help you. You will feel more satisfied and content when your emotional needs are met. So when you get a chance, go to the emotional index quiz at lifecoach.com. Go ahead and take the quiz, and we'll send you an email with your top 4 needs. Knowing what your needs are is the first step to getting them satisfied. And then asking 5 people who already care about you, people who love you and care about you, to meet your needs. And you might ask different people to do different things, and that will help you satisfy those unmet needs. So now this is pretty big. We're going back to Maslow's hierarchy here, and that is the, can I go backwards on this? That is the major source of people's unhappiness and discontentment comes from unmet emotional needs. And we will do all sorts of crazy things. We will we'll stay, on the most extreme example, women who are physically abused in relationships, who are physically abused and being beaten, stay in those relationships because some of their emotional needs are getting met. So that's why there's a pull. We can stay in things that we know are not good for us, even if we're being beaten, because the pull of our emotional needs is so strong. And it's not conscious. Most people aren't consciously aware of what they need, but they're still keeping stuck, and they're doing things that they know aren't correct, like overeating or over shopping, overspending, things that we know we shouldn't be doing, and yet we persist in doing. If there's anything like that in your own life, it's probably the pull of an unmet need that is causing you to do the behavior. Pretty interesting. So I think most addictions, the source we're looking at is an unmet needs, and then the addiction, for example, like smoking, does actually become a physical addiction. But usually it's about fitting in, belonging, that people start to smoke. They want to look cool. They're getting a need met, and that's why they start. So if you start looking at the source of any addiction, drinking, we want to be cool, we want to be relaxed, hang out with people, have a drink, and then it can actually become an addiction. So take a look at your own needs, and you'll find that when you get your needs satisfied, that the addictive behavior may disappear, or that at least it's easier to break that behavior. So there you go. All right, so we've talked about the source of unhappiness. Now let's talk about what makes you happy. So if you look at, we've been looking at getting rid of the things that cause you to be unhappy, which is a good and logical starting point. So we've got to get rid of those first, because otherwise you're just slapping happiness on top, like putting a Band-Aid on a raging wound. It's not going to work. So it's best actually to go in the order of Maslow's hierarchy. He's got that figured out. That really does work to get your survival needs handled, automate as much as you can, free up your time, get your needs met, and then we're looking at the peak of that pyramid at the top, and what it is that's truly important to you. What are your core values? What is it that's really going to have you feel fulfilled in life? Now, I've got a couple of exercises that I'm going to give you that you can do, and most of these come from the book, either Coach Yourself to a New Career, or they're also in Coach Yourself to Success, my first book. So the 2 books together work well. The highlights of your life method. This is basically, imagine that you're about to get hit by a bus. Here comes the bus. Your life flashes before your eyes, and you've got a big yellow highlighter. And as your life is flashing before your eyes, you're highlighting the best times of your life. What were those peak experiences? What stands out as the best? So just do this. You can jot these things down on a piece of paper. What were the peak experiences? What were the best times in your own life? And just jot those things down. So go ahead and do that. And then we take a look. I'm going to skip down to the values list. It's just a list of all the core things that most people do. So the values I think of, again, this is the self-actualization part of the pyramid. Creating things, playing, teaching, leading, designing, inventing, learning, exploring. Those are just peace, beauty, travel, adventure. Those are just some of the common values that people have, the things that we love to do. So the way to think about these are, if you won the lottery and never had to work another day in your life, and then you went to a beach and you rested for 3 months and got completely bored, and maybe it took you a whole year before you were thinking, okay, I feel rested now. I'm ready to do something. What would you do? So you don't need to work for money anymore. You've got plenty of that. What would you just love to do? So you're rested, you're healthy, everything's fine, and you wake up and every day you say, oh boy, I get to do this. Those are your core values. That is the self-actualization. Because what we've discovered about happiness is that just sitting on a beach and drinking margaritas only lasts so long. You get kind of bored of that. I know it sounds good right now, but we get tired of just doing nothing. And if you look at the people who are the mega wealthy people of the world, they do stuff. Bill Gates is still running his company. And now he started the foundation that's mainly down to Melinda. So they have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to do good works in the world. And they are making a difference in the world. They're not sitting around. So they're doing stuff, even though they have enough money that they'd never have to lift a single finger. So you take a look at the Queen of England. She's 90. She could certainly retire by this time with her birthday. But there she is, trucking along, still being the Queen of England. And could definitely have retired. No one would put that past her, would they? But there you go. So you've got people who have certainly plenty of wealth, and yet they carry on doing work. And the reason is because actual work that we enjoy, work that challenges us, makes us happier. So in effect, you can retire early simply by finding a job that you would do anyway, finding work that would be fulfilling to you. And that is the most important thing. If you can find work that you enjoy, it is so worth doing that. If you need to change and get a new career, do so. I look at people and my own brother-in-law, he's been slogging around in a job that he doesn't like in the banking community, and he's just not happy, and he hasn't been. But the problem is he spent his entire life from when he was 13 years old, and now he's 55, and he doesn't actually know what to do with himself because he hasn't tapped into what his core values are. And so you can end up spending your whole life being slightly miserable just to get that good pension or to create that security for your family. So definitely not worth doing. You don't want to spend your whole life doing that. Find what you love to do. And so one of the ways that you can find that is, what games did you play as a child? I know we think that we should just know what our passions are. But believe me, I'm in the coaching business. Most people don't. There's so many options now for careers, and you could start your own business. But there's so many different options. It's hard to figure all this out. And it keeps me in business just because there are those options, and because people are now wanting to be happy in their work and do work they find fulfilling. So clues to help you figure that out. Did you play games when you were a little kid? One of my clients used to just, when she was a little kid, she'd follow the cat anywhere the cat goes. And the game was called Follow the Cat. And she'd follow the cat anywhere it went. And her value was to explore. So you can start to see what games you played as a child and how those relate to your values. One of my values is travel and adventure. I love to travel, and I like to do that and go to new countries that I've never been to. And so travel and adventure are top values. So when I designed my own business, I set myself up as an international speaker, and look, here I am in Dublin speaking internationally. So you can create so much of what you like to do, and the key is to just start with even the smallest, tiniest step forward. So, and I don't want to forget, so we've got the highlights of your life method. Figure out what your values are, and you can get a list of values on the lifecoach.com website, so feel free to do that. Just search for the True Values program. And then can go back to your highlights and see, okay, these were my peak experiences. What were the core values? So if I looked, the year that I lived in Spain got a yellow highlight. I loved that year. And I thought, okay, core value, travel and adventure. I did a lot of traveling that year, and also I was in a foreign country. So the highlights of your life can help you see what those core values really are, what makes you happiest. And then here's another really simple question, and this is my cocktail party method. Who do you envy and why? This is the envy method of finding happiness. And envy is an interesting thing. We envy people because we secretly want something that they have, or something they're doing. We want that for ourselves. So as a coach, I like envy. I always want to know, who do you envy? Because it tells me so much about what that person really wants as their goals in life and what they really want. Because if you envy somebody, you actually want, with a certain amount of hunger and desire, you want what they've got. And sometimes it might be, you envy somebody's Maserati or something like that. But if you envy somebody's accomplishments, like, I want to be a best-selling author, or somebody's done something, a great golfer or something. There's a difference between admiration and envy. And people we admire, for example, you could admire somebody's golfing ability and say, oh yeah, they're really good. But if you don't actually like golfing yourself, you won't necessarily envy them. So you can see, envy and admiration. So I'm actually looking for envy, not just admiration. Admiration, we can respect somebody else's accomplishment without wanting that for ourselves. But envy we want for ourselves. So take a look and see, because if somebody else has done it, that means it's humanly possible to do. So we should be able to get you on the same stuff, potentially. So well worth looking at that. So what makes you happy? You can pull together some of these exercises, start to look at what are the activities that make you happy. I remember the patch in my own personal life when my husband was a bit depressed, and I told him with not much sympathy or compassion or empathy. I told him, I said, look, are you doing anything that makes you feel happy? No. Well, then you don't have any right to be happy. It's true. If you're not doing anything that makes you happy, why do you think you should be happy? Right? Yeah, there you go. So take a look at your day. Are you actually doing anything? All right. So with people, this whole thing, finding out what we're actually good at, we have discovered a few things with coaching. And now, of course, with technology, things are even better. We have some pretty sophisticated computerized assessments that can tell you what your brain is wired up or has been wired up to do since the age of 13 or 14. We can test for musical ability at the age of 6. So your brain actually is unique to you. And your brain has patterns in it, neurological pathways in your brain that give you the ability to do some things naturally and effortlessly and easily, and some things you probably can't do very well at all. So it's really looking at what your natural abilities are, what your true talents are, versus what you think you're good at. So we can actually see very objectively and scientifically, without your opinion won't count on this assessment. We can actually take a look and see what you can do. And there's no, you don't have to poke anything into your brain. This is just an online test. You don't have to have anything stuck out. No helmets required. And you can find out what your brain is meant to do in life. And we use this as part of the Career Change Kit to help people find that happy career. Because if you're spending 8 hours a day in something that you don't enjoy, good luck with that happiness. All right. So to go with the natural flow, to go with the flow means to use your natural talents. If you're going in a canoe, you don't want to paddle upstream. That's hard work. You want to paddle downstream, go with the current. Using your natural abilities, the things you're actually already good at, and mastering those is going with the flow. And what we've found is people who have an ability that they're not using are often unhappy. So this is an interesting thing. This is the source of the midlife crisis. If you've been about age of 40, it starts to kick in. If you have a brain ability that you're not using in your job, after the age of 40, it will start to press on you and demand satisfaction. It's going to demand some use. And you might feel really discontented and not know why. And the reason is oftentimes we have people who are multi-abilities. They might have 3 really strong abilities or more. And most jobs might use 1 or 2 abilities, not 3. And so it's that third ability that they may not even know is there, that's not getting expressed in their work. And they're suddenly thinking, oh, I don't like this job anymore. I'm going to quit. And actually, the job might have been filling 2 of their abilities, and we just needed to figure out what was that third missing ability. Find out what that was so that they can either do it in their spare time as a hobby or take on an extra project at work that would fulfill or satisfy that particular ability. So abilities can be things like musical ability. We have some clients who have that and didn't even know they had a musical ability. In fact, I've had a client who insisted she didn't have musical ability. I did her assessment and I said, you've got musical ability. And she couldn't believe it. She just thought she was no good. And she said, well, actually, I do like singing in the choir. So I said, well, you need to do that. So it may not be a work-related activity you engage in. It might be something you do as a hobby or in the evenings on weekends. But picking up an instrument for a lot of people solves the problem. Another ability that often goes unnoticed is sometimes people need to use their hands. They actually need to create something physical and tangible. So, for example, a surgeon is using their hands. They're actually stitching people up and using their hands. A chef is creating a meal using their hands to create a physical, tangible product at the end of the day. But most of us who work in corporate settings are working in an abstract world, and now with no paper being printed, because we know we don't want to do that. You don't even have a report that you can put your hands on at the end of the day, and you may feel that you work all day and have nothing real to show for it. And if that's the case, you have this need to use your hands, and we can test for that too. So those are 2. The musical one is often a hidden ability that goes unnoticed, as well as this need to have a tangible product at the end of the day. And for somebody like that, they might want to take up something like quilting or cooking or woodworking, different sorts of things that would have you use your hands and create a tangible product. Those, if unexpressed, start to create that midlife crisis potentially around the age of 40. So very important that we have a way to use our abilities in our life. And again, this can be a source of discontentment, but also a great source of happiness when we do fulfill our abilities. So I'll leave you with that. And then finally, we've got to have something to look forward to every day. It really helps to have something fun to look forward to. Maybe you're meeting a friend for lunch, you're going to take a nice hot bath at the end of the day, or go for a walk or run. Something every day. It can be little things. So I would get my clients to do a design of their ideal life. And stick figures are fine. You can sketch it out and just put some notes on there if you don't know what your own drawings look like. But draw out what the elements of your ideal life would be on a piece of paper. And then start incorporating some of those elements into your life now. So I had one client, and she said the ideal way to start her day would be to have a blueberry muffin, homemade oat bran blueberry muffin, with a cup of tea on her back deck, overlooking her woods, and writing in her journal. And that was the ideal way to start her day. And she realized she could do that every day. She didn't have to wait till sometime in the future. She could do that now. So this is the thing. We can all do little things to make our life much more ideal. So if you could start with the ideal way to start your day and the ideal way to end your day, that would be a good place to start. And then ideally we'll get you into that happy career so that your whole day will be fantastic. So obviously, again, do the things that make you feel happy, orient your entire life around those core values and passions, and you will be a happy camper every day. And then one final little tip to maximize happiness. The studies have shown now, scientific studies, that anticipating something creates happiness. So let's say even something simple like you're anticipating meeting a friend for lunch and you're looking forward to that. That creates happiness because you have something positive to look forward to. Anticipating a holiday a trip that you're going to take, the more anticipation you can build into something, the more you'll increase your happiness. Then you take your trip or you have your lunch, enjoy that present moment fully. Then take your photographs, because reliving the memories afterwards expands the happiness. So you can actually really milk one event and get a lot of happiness out of one thing if you anticipate it and then you relive the memories afterwards and share those. And that's one thing I think is bad about Facebook, because I went going on a trip and people used to ask, how was your holiday? And now they just say, oh, I see you've been on a holiday. And that's the end of it. So really maximize it. It's like, well, I want to tell you about my holiday. So there you go. We must have some questions at this point.
We do. Thanks for Elaine. Definitely a few changes on the horizon for both myself and our listeners. The joy levels in my closet definitely need to be assessed.
I had a feeling your closet needed a little work.
Okay, so we have lots of questions, and we won't get to them all, unfortunately, because we're running out of time. We have 3 minutes left. So, in reference to clearing your schedule, how does one say no without sounding unhelpful?
Yeah, so the boss says, hey, can you do this? And you don't want to look like you're not a team player. So you tend to say, yeah, I can do that. But you don't want to say no, because then that doesn't look good, right? And you think, oh, I can't always be the no person. So you want to say yes, especially if it's your boss asking or a friend asking. So we have this inclination to say yes to everything, which gets us in trouble with our schedule. But you can say no gracefully. So if your boss comes up to you and instead of saying no, you say, oh, wow, that sounds like an interesting thing to do. I'd really like to take that on. Look, here's my schedule. I'm working on project A, project B, and project C. Should I put this one ahead of those? So ask your boss what's the priority. And then your boss might say, oh, actually, you're working on that A, B, and C projects. Okay, you know what? Let me see if Joe can do this. So your boss may not realize how much you're already doing. And it's a great way of showing willingness, but at the same time also letting your boss know what you're already doing, and then getting your boss's input on what's the priority here and how should you handle that. And your boss very well say, actually, this trumps everything. You need to put this as priority number 1, and it's okay then. And so, okay, well, then these things are going to be bumped back a couple of weeks. I'll need to extend the deadline on those. So he's or she is fully aware of what you're up to and what, if you have deadlines that are going to get pushed back now. So that's a really easy way to do it. With friends and family, you could say, oh, thank you so much for thinking about me. I'm honored that you've invited me to this. Unfortunately, I have prior engagement. Now, that prior engagement might just be the white space in your calendar, but you don't need to tell them that.
Okay, that's great. Sounds familiar. Okay, so the next one is, do you need to make a certain income or salary to be happy?
Well, now that's an interesting question, because they've done studies on this as well. And in America, they figured out that there's a maximum dollar amount for happiness. Who knew? So there is actually a dollar amount, and it's $75,000 a year. So after $75,000 a year, which is not a huge, that's above average. The average salary in America is $50,000. So I think to translate this to different countries, find out what the average salary is and add a bit more on top of it. And I personally think the reason that's the figure is just exactly that. We compare ourselves to other people. And if you feel like you're doing a little bit better than your friends, you're going to think, hey, I'm all right. If you think you're doing worse than your friends, you're going to be sad. So happiness is very relative at that sense. We compare ourselves. So at the point, and there's another reason for that as well, is that, it's pretty hard. If you go on a pretty minimalist expense, it's hard to cut below about $30,000, $40,000 a year, because of basic food costs and housing costs and all that. So basically, it goes back to our pyramid. Survival needs cost about $30,000. If you want to add on a few luxuries, a few dinners out, then you're looking at $40,000, $50,000. You want to have a few foreign trips overseas, well, then you're looking at $75,000. That gives you good, schools for your kids, and you feel that you're pretty much at the top of the heap. Anything over that, and then it's like gravy, but it doesn't actually increase your happiness.
Okay. Okay, we'll go for one more, and then I think we'll answer the rest of them after the webinar, and we'll share them with everyone afterwards.
Great.
Okay, so what is the most effective technique for reassuring ourselves if we're totally overwhelmed on a really bad day?
Well, you know what? We all have bad days. We all have these bad days. Hopefully those are few and far between. And when you're living in accordance with your core values and your abilities, you'll find that those are very few and far between. But if you've had a really bad day, sometimes it helps if you just talk it out with a friend and say, or write, I often find writing a nasty letter and not sending it really works. So if I'm mad at somebody for messing up my life, I'll write a nasty letter and not send it. Don't ever send a nasty email. It only creates problems. But yeah, sometimes you just need to write about it. Writing in a journal can really help get the steam, offload a bit. Sometimes talking over with a friend, just get the stuff, download yourself, vent a little bit. It's okay to vent. You just don't want to vent permanently. And that will help you feel better. And then take a look. Here's the other thing. One of my philosophies in life is that it's all good, even the bad stuff. And sometimes you can say, okay, well, is there anything good about this day? I had one very bad day in my life. I actually had to fire somebody when I used to work at Chase Manhattan Bank. I had to fire an elderly lady there. And I felt really bad about it, but she was terrible. She was so irritable all the time, and she wasn't treating customers nicely. And so I had to fire her. Gave her plenty of warnings. And I cried that day. I really cried. It was a horrible day for me. Well, 2 weeks later, she came sailing into the bank, bringing a pineapple upside down cake with the biggest smile on her face. I had never seen her so happy. It turns out she was miserable working at the bank. Hello. And me firing her was the best thing that could have happened. So sometimes things look really bad in the moment, but then later on we realize, actually, that was a good thing. It set me free to now do what I love to do. So you never know when the pineapple upside down cake is coming around the corner.
Okay. I think we've gone way over. So sorry about that. Thanks for everyone for staying on with us. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about your book, did you?
If you want some extra resources here, I can recommend Coach Yourself to Success has 101 tips. So if these 7 tips were helpful, you can only imagine there's more to be found. If you're interested in the needs piece, I would recommend The Secret Laws of Attraction. That's a relationship book, but if you think about it, emotional needs are critical to our happiness and relationships. So if you want to dive into the second level of the pyramid, that would be that book. And then Coach Yourself to New Career if you aren't happy. For heaven's sakes, get yourself a job you love. What are you waiting for? Life is way too short. Remember the ferret on his last legs? Just how many does he have left? You don't want to be hanging out there and being miserable. So get yourself a job you love. And we do have another resource that is really helpful, the Career Change Kit. I mentioned these computerized assessments that we use. They are very sophisticated. It takes 3 hours to complete them, so very, very intense. But at the end of that, you will know what your brain is meant to do. You will know what your hidden talents are. So if you're in a midlife crisis, you don't necessarily have to get divorced and buy a Maserati. You might just need to take this little quiz and find out what is missing in your life. And it also includes a workplace motivators report, 6 hours of audio explanation. That's me explaining everything. And as well a copy of Coach Yourself to a New Career. So if you feel that that's you and if you are miserable in your work, please do not hesitate to get yourself sorted out. It's a small investment in time and money compared to the misery of working in a job for years that you don't like. So that's our other resource. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at info@lifecoach.com. Our website's lifecoach.com. There's tons of free resources there, including some of the assessments that I mentioned, in the True Values program, and the needs quiz is on there as well.
Okay. Just to everyone, we got a lot of questions in about the webinar and whether it's going to be available afterwards. If you couldn't make the webinar, or if you had to leave early or you came on late, it'll be available 1 week from now on all of our local Morgan McKinley websites and on morganmckinley.com. As always, we'd love to hear your feedback on this webinar, so please send all of your feedback through to events@morganmckinley.com. Okay, so I think that's it from us. Elaine, thanks a million for joining us again and hosting another fantastic webinar. Thank you to everyone for taking the time today to join us from all across the world. We really hope you enjoy the content, and we hope to see you next time.